Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. And I started a stream and I had to stop the stream because I was logged out of absolutely everywhere. And it didn't make any sense. Nothing was connecting. So I thought maybe something had happened to the Rumble connections. And so I had to, well, it looks like it's been fixed. It looks like I'm streaming on everything right now. But oh my gosh, I haven't even started recording. I forgot to start the recording. Oh my gosh. Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. And I was just explaining to the live stream that my entire system stopped working this morning. And so I had to reset it all. And so I erroneously started a stream that didn't work, but it did connect to some places, I guess. And now it looks like I'm connecting properly, which is better. Anyway, public safety minister was caught writing letters for terrorists, meaning the terrorist committed a crime, was connected to the terrorism that he committed, and our current Minister of Public Safety wrote a letter in support for him, and that's a pretty big deal. We're going to start there. So that seems weird, right? And it seems probably like we should get rid of that guy, because if he's writing letters for terrorists, how much worse is it, right? If only we knew how bad it really is. Public holidays on the chopping block. Easter, who needs Easter? France is looking at getting rid of Easter Monday and another one May 8th as a holiday, public holiday to save money. And so, yes, let's water down your culture because we've got to save a buck. Very, very interesting. Look what happens. They burn Notre Dame and it gets worse, right? And then they take away Easter. Chris Carbet is released, and so that's good. I find it interesting. We were talking about it recently, and Tamara Litch was highlighting that he was granted bail on June 30th and not released until yesterday, apparently. So I've got that news. And Alberta independence is a hot topic. And one, they're serious. Two, that just means the opposition to them is going to get their game face on. I'm looking for a change in tactics because the powers that be are losing the public. And so they're going to have to wedge Alberta. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think Canada as an apparatus, as a thing, Canada, will allow Alberta to leave. However, I want Alberta to be able to decide their course for themselves. And so I feel like if Canada as an apparatus, even including the premier in Alberta, has anything at all to do with the exit strategy, the vote, anything at all, they'll do anything they can to cast doubt on the outcome or just stop the outcome, rig the vote, rig the election, rig whatever they need to rig, inject bad actors. And there's a lot of evidence that there are people who are doing this. Private people, government people, federal people, provincial people, who knows who. But there are a lot of these operations going on in online, like in spaces, in person, right? And so I'll show you some of that. It's wild and crazy, but I'm worried because when you go through a process like doing a separation vote or putting all of that together, it's complicated, takes a lot of people, there's money, there's campaigning, there's nights out that are, in big arenas talking to the citizens, selling your idea and so on and so forth. And all of that is energy, right? And that energy expended, if you lose, you can't recapture that energy. That energy is expended. And so if you lose, you don't have the energy to do that again, right? And so it's similar to Pierre Poilievre losing his seat. It's similar to the Conservatives not winning this election in 25. Meanwhile, I don't think the Conservatives would have, quote, fixed it. But it takes all the stuffing out of the public who wanted the change, right? After Carney won, there wasn't a big push broadly for another election, right? The Conservatives didn't vote for to vote down the throne speech. They're supporting the Liberals broadly and a whole bunch of other things. So I find that all very, very interesting. Same applies to Alberta separation. If you fail, then all of the stuffing gets knocked out of the whole movement. And it doesn't reconstitute, even if things get worse for a while. Okay? So I feel worried that we're being played. Okay? Alberta, I worry about you guys. And I worry about Canada, but I worry about Alberta because they've got a strategy like they can fix it. And I feel like the citizens think they can fix it. And I think we're being played, okay? Just like we were before the 25 election. So Hope I'm wrong. Hope I'm wrong. Lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We've got to do our grab bag of governance. I was going to start with the 2030 agenda with France. I was going to talk about U.S. trade to start out with, but I think this is more important, honestly, and Canadian. So we'll do that. Here's Casey, and he says, you can't make this stuff up. You just can't. Canada's Minister of Public Safety, our equivalent to the Department of Homeland Security, has written immigration support letters for a known terrorist. Wah, wah, right? Like, who loses? Canada loses. Canada is the one who loses here. Stewart says, border security. Last week, federal court upheld a CBSA decision rejecting the immigration application of a Sri Lankan man on the grounds that he was a terrorist group member. The decision mentioned that the evidence in the case included a letter of support for the applicant by an MP who was not named. Curious, we read through the hefty court file and discovered that the MP was Liberal Gary Anasandagri, who is now the Minister of Public Safety, making him responsible for national security. Wah, wah, right? Like, so Canada, man, we're terrible. We suck. On Monday, the minister released a statement defending his actions. So, great. Please check out the remarkable story of the minister and the terror group member. So, man, Canada's in real trouble, and nobody appears to really care. Do you think that the press is going to push Carney on this? Or can you keep him in the ministry position knowing this information? Did you know beforehand? So on and so forth. Leo Housakis is responding to Mercedes Stevenson. She says, before joining cabinet, public safety minister wrote immigration support letters for terror group member. And yeah, that happened. And Housakis is saying, it shouldn't need saying, but under this liberal government, it does. Writing letters supporting known terrorists should disqualify anyone from ever serving as a minister of public safety or any cabinet position at all. You wrote a letter for who? Who did what? Canada's chronic unseriousness on national security is summed up by repeated lapses in judgment like this, never met by any ministerial accountability. So is he going to be fired? Unlikely. Unlikely, I would say, but again, I hope I'm wrong. Here's Pierre Poilievre, and he's jumping into the podcasting game, right? Come on my show if you want to, sir. I can show you the ropes-ish. Although I'm not very good at live streaming, it seems. Wah, wah. It's a straight 5 minutes, and he jumps right into the conversation. 35,000 views. How many likes? 5,000 likes. And is he going to lose this election and become a podcaster? Is he going to have Andrew Lawton on his show? You know, come on. I mean, really? I don't see it. Although I do think that possibly there is an outside chance, because I think that the elections are rigged, that Poilievre may lose this election. So we'll see. It's unlikely, very unlikely. It's a very safe conservative seat. So probably what will happen is they'll have a conservative leadership review and remove him as the leader in January. That'll be way more embarrassing for him. CBC Watcher says, according to estimates, the Department of Finance will pay $3.5 billion to the Canada Infrastructure Bank this year, a crown corporation in the news recently for financing ferry purchases from China. Its establishment in 2017 was a poor idea to begin with. Again, the appropriate amount for this is $0. Three more pieces of low-hanging fruit are Via Rail, $1.9 billion, including its subsidy via whatever, whose mandate is to develop and implement high-frequency rail, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, $1.4 billion, and Canada Post Corporation, $1.1 billion. So Financial Post is reporting there's no shortage of federal activities to cut. Yeah, there's a whole lot of federal waste that really doesn't produce anything material. All it produces is waste. All it produces, if they produce something, it's well below the billions spent on it, right? Like CBC, for one example, Canada Post as another, right? So, and I'm sure that the Infrastructure Bank qualifies in a similar spirit to those two behemoths. Here's CBC Watcher again responding to Holly Doan, who unblocked me and is lovely. I had a conversation with her in via direct message, and I said, I appreciate what you do. Thank you so much for trying to hold Ottawa accountable. And she said it was a nice thing to say. So it was nice. It was nice to talk to a sane person in the news industry. Anyway, she says, feds say that the true cost of wildfires may run into the billions with a B, including expenses like lost timber fees and declining tourism receipts. The number of wildfires causing significant losses is increasing. Arson. It's arson. In Ontario, people are talking, my mom mentioned, she said, I came out this morning and all I could smell was fire. And I said, oh, because it didn't smell like fire yesterday afternoon, and I didn't realize that there was a wildfire burning in Northern Ontario at this point in time. Because usually when I do my show and there's wildfires, I can feel it because I need to have a drink. If I don't have a drink, my throat goes dry. So And usually I have a drink, but I'm a little late because I have to do the camp drop off. So womp womp. Anyway, regardless of all of that, usually I can feel it just in my garage, but I didn't feel it yesterday. And so I was surprised, but it's arson and it's being used to bolster the narrative of climate change. And I think that that's irresponsible and not something that a government that is working for its citizens in good faith would do. Personally, I think that. Here is Dacey, and he's trying to hold Mark Carney accountable, and he's asking, look inside yourself, Mark Carney. Do you have any answers for Canadians?
Mr. Is a tariff-free deal still possible? We're looking for an English clip, sir.
103 conflicts.
Is a tariff-free deal still possible, sir?
Mr. Carney, you said you had no possible conflicts of interest. We now know you have 103. Mr. Carney, Mark, look inside yourself. What do you have to say to Canadians who feel they've been lied to? Mr. Carney.
103 conflicts of interest.
Right? So there you go. Carney not talking to the press, not talking to anybody. He has talked to these people before. Like I've shown clips of Dacey asking him questions. There's been back and forth. Carney answers in French and English. They get closer than they were able to get in that clip as well. I have seen, and you could hear the protesters in the background saying F you Carney and 103 conflicts of interest where he lied and said that there were no conflict of interest. So they're very concerning things coming from a prime minister. And so it's interesting now, not so cocky, not so willing to engage. And that's interesting to watch too. Here's Blake, and he says, this guy ran for Toronto mayor and he's blocked me. So it's interesting who blocks me. I find it very interesting. As Toronto grapples, he says, with raw sewage pollution in Lake Ontario, regular beach closures, and city streets littered with trash, Mayor Chow's extensive international travel at a taxpayer's expense has raised eyebrows, particularly regarding her upcoming trip to Ireland and the United Kingdom. Why is the Toronto mayor having a whirlwind trip in the middle of summer to Ireland and the United Kingdom? Why is that? Why is that? Ireland is worse than Canada with regards to what's going on with globalism and the ongoing invasion. I don't want to say way worse, but they're targeting small villages and then doubling or tripling the population with migrants. And that's wild. And that was happening a couple of years ago. I don't even know what's happening now because the towns are fighting back. So I don't know if they've changed tactics, but having Mayor Chow go through Ireland and the United Kingdom, yikes, because those laws are you don't want them here. We don't want them here. Holy cow. So, yep, Ireland, United Kingdom, it's a trade mission overseas. Why is the mayor of Toronto going on a trade mission to the United Kingdom? What? They're not supposed to negotiate internationally. They're mayors. Like they're not even provincial representatives. They're a mayor. Like stop going to Dubai on Bloomberg's dime, mayor everyone. Here's Red Pill Rick, and he says Canadian real estate is a bubble. It's a textbook bubble. So yeah, you can see. So here is your textbook bubble, and you can see. Oh my gosh, I can't use the mouse, so I'll have to talk you through it. But on the far left of the graph, it says the stealth phase and the takeoff of the bubble, awareness phase, first sell-off. Okay, so there's a bubble, so I've got to get out of this while the getting's good. Look how much money we've made, right? But that's not even the beginning of the really, really high increases yet. Bear trap happens, media attention, enthusiasm, greed, delusion, new paradigm hit right at the top. It's a new paradigm of borrowing, right? And then the paradigm breaks and sales start to flounder and people are making less money, right? And then you get a rebound, bull trap and a rebound, and then the market really tanks. Fear, capitulation, and it goes below the mean, so below what was happening previous, and then despair happens. And so where are we on this scale? You can see the artificial holding up of the asset after the bear trap, and then the return to normal begins, but no return to normal begins on our bubble. You see, our bubble hasn't popped yet. So you can see from June 2005 or January 2005, and it goes all the way through, and it goes through exactly this line. It's really quite something. And then maybe there was a false top here too. Do you see the January 2017? You got a reduction, and then it looks like it's supposed to break then, but it didn't break then, right? And then up on between January 21 and January 23, looks like 22. January 22, it breaks, right? And so it's interesting because the prediction, if things were not monkeyed with, we should go down and return to mean after despair. Like we should bottom out below mean and then return to despair. But they don't want that to happen because they lose control. So they're going to keep bringing people in and keep propping up the system with those people and that Ponzi scheme. This is the Ponzi scheme. And they'll say this is a new paradigm, and they'll try and prop it up as long as they possibly can with every trick in the book, because this maintains their control. Okay? I find it interesting. I mean, it's terrible. We're being abused, but I find it so interesting to watch. The people are watching this and going, okay, yep, that's just how much houses cost now. You know, if you want a house, you got to have $1 million. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. Whew, wild. Josh says, if your country needs endless population growth to function, you do not have an economy. You have a pyramid scheme. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Other people see it. Maybe kind of, sort of. This doesn't fit anywhere else. I don't have a COVID section today. Although there is copious amounts of COVID news, and it's what we thought. And I don't want to waste your time with it and not waste your time because it's important news, but this is part of the broader war. They're not going to admit a mistake here. This is part and part. mRNA technology is the next step, and they're not going to give that up. And so the battle rages on with regards to all of that. But the people who run everything, they want that to go forward. So extrapolate, please. But Kayla says she got the Moderna shot. She woke up paralyzed. She was diagnosed with vaccine-induced transverse myelitis, offered MAID instead of real medical care. 3 years later, no compensation, still fighting, still here. And they're removing the March of Dimes support, PSW support, and a lot of other things. So her care base, her ability to look after herself with support that people who are paralyzed typically get, is at risk. And so it's a terrible story, and I don't know how to fix it because it seems like there are so many things broken, and the way to fix it is, well, not how we've traditionally fixed it. Although Greg yesterday made a great point. He said there's enormous political power wielded by people who aren't even citizens, and they hold protests and they put pressure on the government and they do media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, like nobody represents the people in Ontario who just want, for example, a sane government who focuses on Ontario, who focuses on good policy, driving further ease of life, riches, things like that for Canadians, Ontarians who live and work in Ontario, rather than, what about those people in Gaza? What about those people in the Middle East? What about those people, blah, blah, blah. Oh, we should bring them here. No. Why are we focusing on this? It's wild and crazy. So there are people out there who want that, I think, and there are a lot of them. But as Greg was pointing out yesterday, there's no group. There's no way to talk to those people about that. No medium. And so I think that's interesting as well. CNBC says France, moving on, in 2030 agenda, France flirts with cutting into 2 public holidays. The headline is burying the lead on purpose, mind you, right? Because you're like, which public holidays, right? Labor Day? What are you going to get rid of, France? And so the French government suggests that the public holidays could face the axe are Easter Monday. Get rid of that Easter. Oh, it's like those Easter worshipers will mind, but nobody else will mind, right? And they've imported enough of everybody else that the Easter worshipers are minimal, right? Because you can't say Christians in modern newspapers, apparently. I don't know. But yeah, Easter Monday and May 8th, which is a war celebration, but I can't remember which war celebration. So apologies that it's not off the top of my head. The Arc de Triomphe. Yeah, okay. So it's the anniversary of VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. That's it. They made a big deal out of Trump made a big deal out of VE Day. Without the United States, that wouldn't have been one. We should be celebrated too on VE Day he was talking about. So apologies that it wasn't top of mind. It was there though. Anyway, I find that interesting that France wants to get rid of Easter Monday, and I'll be interested to see how they bridge getting rid of Thanksgiving in favor of Truth and Reconciliation Day, because it's coming. It's coming. They're going to come up with some cockamamie excuse, and it's coming. I promise. I hope I'm wrong. Anyway, here's Juno News, and let's talk about trade very quickly. U.S. President Donald Trump threatens a 35% tariff on Canadian exports. A consumer policy expert says Canada's decades-old supply management regime is a core obstacle to resolving the trade dispute with the U.S. I've been talking forever. I was talking when the USMCA was being negotiated, and the supply management was on the table, not even on the table then, and Trump wanted it, and Freeland was wearing "Mama's not equal to chopped liver" or chopped something or other, and it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. The trade was ridiculous because on purpose, nobody listened to what Trump wanted, and on purpose, nobody addressed what he wanted, and so that is a thorn in our side. And I think the tariffs were going to happen anyway. I think the tariffs are a crowning feature because it shifts the way government is funded. It takes the onus off the taxpayer and shifts it to people who want to do business with the United States. And the businesses don't mind paying, right? And so, yes, costs may be passed on to the taxpayer to a degree, but by and large, the businesses just want access to that market. Because without that market, the business doesn't exist. So will they pay 35% to access the market? Yes, absolutely they will, for sure. More, right? So, and I mean, there are things like copper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Trump's offered a way out, right? Aluminum, steel, all of that stuff. That's called negotiation. When he said economic force, we're watching it. This is that, right? And it's not just Canada. And he's sure of himself, and he has a plan. He has an idea of how Canada is going to respond to this and what he's going to do next, because he wants to turn the screws. He doesn't want to just sit there. He has an objective he wants to accomplish. He doesn't want to just punish people. He is doing this to move us somewhere. He wants us to do something, right? And he said what? Fentanyl and remove the supply management, but also the supply management's a proxy, really. Like the supply management's the excuse. It's a meaty one, right? And 400%, blah, 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 blah. But if you don't capitulate to that, if you don't talk about that, then Trump's got free reign to talk about whatever the heck he wants, because that's the entryway in. Anyway, I digress. Here's the food professor, and the food professor's responding to Andrew. Well, he says, Andrew Coyne pens an op-ed this morning. There may be no way of dealing with Trump that works. No shit, Sherlock. Some of us figured that out months ago. And food professor says, Canadians in March, Mark Carney will charm the tariffs away and out-negotiate Trump. Canadians in July, tariffs are going to be part of this. The best deal possible includes keeping the tariffs. Reality called lower your expectations. Yep. So it's very interesting. Here's Pierre Poilievre. He says the Prime Minister is now conceding that American tariffs on Canada will be part of an eventual deal. Another unilateral concession from a man who said he would never back down to the U.S. president. So yeah, he is accepting the new tariffs and saying, well, they're probably going to stick around because we don't have anything that we're willing to give. We're willing to negotiate that will impact that. And that's unfortunate, because I think all Trump is asking for is a reduction in supply management, which hard no from Carney, right? Hard no from Carney for sure. And fentanyl, the reduction and removal of the fentanyl trade going from Canada into the United States. And that's, again, Carney pretends that there is no fentanyl trade. There is nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. Sorry about your luck. So we couldn't possibly do anything. So that's a non-starter either. So that's interesting. Here I found this is done last night. This is a town hall in Alberta. He just says, I don't want to back it up because it can be, I guess I could 34.49. See, it's 34.27. That's okay. We'll back it up a little bit. He says here, this is the end of Danielle Smith answering the last question. And then when she passes back to the moderator says, we've got one more question in this, and then we'll move on to the next thing. I don't think this guy gets an answer, but the question is interesting. And Danielle Smith, they don't answer it, I guess. Here we go.
At a subsidy, we could say, well, you can choose to do that, but we will presume the market rate and what the revenues would be at that market rate. And if you choose to subsidize, that's on you, but you can't get that from the rest of the country. So there's two things that we could put in there for conditions.
I love listening to what you got to say.
That was in response to a question about equalization payments and like how can we deal with Quebec? Like we send billions of dollars to Quebec, and they have natural gas that they could bring to market, but they're not bringing it to market. They're just stealing our money. Why are they stealing our money? Why can't they just develop their own resources? And Smith said what she said, like we could have a system saying you have these resources, and so we're not going to pay you equalization because you chose not to develop these resources. And then here's the next question.
That's it. Thank you. Okay, we're going to allow one more question on this topic. We're going to roll to the next video. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Corwin Will Work, and I'm from the Stettler area. Your video said it's Ottawa continues or has ignored us and will continue to ignore us. It doesn't matter what we do here tonight or what the outcome of this is. They will continue to ignore us. There's one question only, that needs to be on a referendum, and that is, do you support Alberta exiting Canadian Confederation and becoming a sovereign nation? At that point, then you'll be able to negotiate with Ottawa. Then you'll be able to negotiate with Quebec. Without that, they will continue to ignore us. If they do not know that we are serious and we can leave at any point in time, we will not ever get a pipeline to the Atlantic Ocean. It is time to put the separation question on a ballot so that Alberta people can decide. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say we're off and running, wouldn't you?
So
the next topic will be the Alberta.
well, we'll allow one more question. Will you put up a referendum for Albertans' separation, et cetera, and then nobody answers the question? So it's typical. This is Canadian politics, right? Hello, did you not understand the question? Like, will you? Yes or no? Here's Mark Nixon. He says Alberta next Red Deer Town Hall summary sat through the full 2 hours and 38 minutes. That was what I just showed you. That's this here. Okay. And he says, here's an unfiltered truth and raw sentiment, no spin. Albertans showed up big, packed the room, zero heckling, genuine patriotism in every question. Canadian dream, gone, repeated line, we want the Canada before Trudeau and Liberal overreach. Hunger for change, crowd backed every provincial power grab on the table. Alberta pension plan, provincial police, immigration, transfer payments, etc. Freedom and prosperity equals core. Whenever someone said freedom, room erupted. Prosperity, God equal cheers. Ottawa equals an obstacle. Speakers blamed equalization. Energy strangulation. Housing, immigration, healthcare, censorship laws, debt and inflation squarely on the feds. I hope on life support. They prefer a united Canada only if the clock can be rewinded to pre-2015. You can't go back, man. You can't go back. You can only go through it. Confidence is in that near zero. Separation to gain power back, win-win, in or out of Canada. Talk of a Western Bloc, multiple mics floated a formal Alberta, Saskatchewan, British Columbia economic union. I'm sorry, British Columbia would be a hard no unless you get the corruption out, because like, why are you onboarding that group of that very corrupt province? There is a criminal syndicate that uses the short form, the Vancouver method, to talk about laundering drug money through casinos and through real estate. Like, no, what? No. Consensus, not chaos. 95% of comments aligned with the panel's draft recommendations. This wasn't a protest. It was a policy workshop. Premier Smith took notes, promised legislation or a referendum question once the 10-city tour wraps this fall. Countdown has started. Bottom line, Alberta's alienation has moved from dollars and cents to identity and survival. If Ottawa shrugs a Quebec-style rupture, but with oil and gas and critical minerals behind it, it jumps from hypothetical to inevitable. United Canada on life support. Personally, and I understand what he's saying, and I think that like Alberta has a grievance. They've been treated badly economically by Ottawa for generations. And now it seems like Ottawa actively hates them while bilking billions of them per year. And I feel the same way, right? Like, it's not billions for me, but they clearly hate me. They clearly hate me. And by extension, people like me. You know, people who dare to question the ideology of gender ideology, the immigration, the unending immigration, and people who try and find answers for why this is happening. Like, I think it's a Ponzi scheme, and people get told, and we're not told, the public's not told, but the people in power are told that if you stop this, the economic damage is going to be severe, and it's going to be unstoppable, and it's going to blah, 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 blah. Like fear. Imagine the COVID stuff, but about the economy and people defending their immigration scheme to people who don't know better, basically, is what I'm describing. But they hate us. They hate us. And they don't want us to realize that they hate us, but they hate us, okay? They like that we produce things and then they steal our tax dollars, but they'd rather we just die, I think. And so the alienation that Alberta feels, I feel it too. I don't think that the people in charge of Ontario like the citizens of Ontario by and large. I don't think the leadership of Guelph likes the citizens of Guelph by and large, although Guelph's a special case where there are a whole bunch of people who really, really believe the nonsense. And federally, I think that the people who run the country, by and large, hate the people who live in the country. And that is the feeling that I get from absolutely everything I've seen from these people for the last 10 years. Every one of them, every single one of them. So you ask questions like, hey, can you explain the strategy between fighting with the Liberals on X and supporting everything the Liberals do in the House of Commons? Because I saw Jagmeet Singh do that, and I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now. So can you explain it? Because otherwise it looks like you're in bed with the Liberals while lying on X, because that's what it looks like. So, and then they ignore you, right? Or they block you, right? So wild and crazy stuff. And so I'd love to have a leadership that doesn't actively hate me. I'd love that. I would love that. And it seems like Alberta has people who are passionate enough to actually pull this off. And I hope they do. I hope they do. Here's Jeffrey, not Ralph, Rath.
You know, the vested power structure of this country and the structure of Canadian federalism is designed to keep Alberta in its place as a colony, basically generating wealth for Eastern Canada at the expense of every Albertan and every person in this room. That's the way the country was designed. It was designed intentionally, and we have been basically on the receiving end of it as a colonized and oppressed people since the inception of Alberta as a province in 1905. You know, the vested power...
Yeah, it was designed that way on purpose. And now that I see it, I can't unsee it. I can't unsee it. Here is Snacks Man, and he says, thanks for the summary. The sentiment is too great for this to peter out, as many in central Canada predict. There is an inevitability about this. And Mark says, listening to the entire thing, I have to agree with you. People are motivated for change, and they don't believe it's going to come from Ottawa. Okay. Remember what happened before the 2025 election. Pierre Poilievre was packing places. He was just lots of people, 5,000 people showing up, entire town showing up. You know, people were there. People were excited. Holy smokeronies. Everybody's going to do this. We're all going to go to Ontario, and we're all going to be there for when Pierre Poilievre wins this election, and so on and so forth. And it didn't happen. Okay. And when it didn't happen, the stuffing got knocked out of the supporters. And where are we now? Right. And I'm worried. I want to point it out. I want to keep saying it, because if we don't acknowledge the game we're playing, then we're going to lose it, I think. We got to do crime. I'm going to do crime really quick, because this is just egregious stuff, and then free speech, and then we're going to cut it off for the live stream. So thanks for watching, everybody. We're almost done for the live stream. And Import the Third World says, police charged 13, including minors, in organized home invasion and theft rings. So this happened on July 16th. I think it actually happened yesterday. But by July 16th, they're out on bail, which is absolutely crazy, right? Like, here's the police officer announcing they're out on bail. Five of the guys who are participating in the home invasion, they're out on bail. But don't worry, because we really, really respect everybody who lives in this community and stuff.
Ask the team to correct me, but of the 13 charged, 5 have been provided bail. Now, keeping in mind some of those are youth. And then to speak to the broader question that you're asking, Neaton, particularly around like sentencing, bail reform, I think what I would like to do is just provide assurance to our community, and certainly the people that were affected by the crimes in this investigation. Peel Police is not just enforcement oriented. We are looking for the gaps and the issues, and really the opportunity to represent voices like yours.
The gaps are, we keep letting people out on bail who commit violent, atrocious crimes, and nobody seems to really care about that. Violent people are being let out of jail, while people like Chris Carbet rot in prison, right? While people like Greg and people like me and people like Spencer, et cetera, worry about lawfare if you make a mean joke, right? Or if you say something that somebody takes offense to where you didn't mean offense necessarily. And I just think all of this is meant to shut down anybody who has a legitimate issue and make our streets unlivable, unsafe. And it seems like this has happened before, right? Like this isn't new. We're redoing this again. Tom Quiggin's responding to this National Post article. An Ontario resident tried to buy sex from what he thought was a 15-year-old. He was given a conditional discharge to help him stay in Canada. Huh. Judges in Canada now actively assist sex offenders who target minors to stay in Canada and get citizenship. Why do we even have a legal system anymore? To protect the criminals. That's why. National Post is reporting Ash Kumar Kant, an engineer from India, tried to buy sex from what he thought was a 15-year-old in Mississauga. He was given a conditional sentence, no criminal record, in part because the judge didn't want to disrupt his immigration prospects. Huh. So what happens if, like, you got caught doing that? Would they say, "Oh, listen, you know, we don't want to interrupt your employment prospects or anything like that. So we're just not going to. We're going to pretend we didn't see this. Don't do that again." You know, like, weird. Tristan says, Canada is the only country on earth that punishes your sex crime more lightly if you're a foreigner. It is one of several perverse consequences to a legal system that has actively decided that some classes of people deserve different laws than other classes. And Barbara says, Canada isn't the only country. The United Kingdom and Europe and some Scandinavian countries tread very lightly when it comes to foreigners and sex crimes when they chose to treat it at all. In fact, I think this Canadian incident is inspired by European moves on the file rather than taking their mistake as a warning. So yeah, we're not the only country that does this, but apparently there's some kind of legal structure in place that directs judges to go lightly on sentences. Tristan again was talking about this on some other thing, but he's blocked me and I don't care. So he was talking about that and other people were discussing it. But if you have the opportunity to do the right thing or the wrong thing, shouldn't you do the right thing? Like, I don't know. And that applies to judges, doesn't it? Right? BUAC says when the crime fraud envelope is revealed. So Chris Carbet has been released. Western Standard is reporting Chris Carbet released after more than 3 years behind bars, heading for home. So that's good to hear. And BUAC highlights this. When the crime fraud envelope is released, a lot of people that participated in the fraud will switch places. In case you forgot about the secret crime fraud envelope, the crime fraud envelope refers to sealed documents that allegedly hold information that could be incriminating to the Crown. Very little information about the envelope has been made public. Smith says she is open to an inquiry after all the legal proceedings have been completed, noted Van H. I think once they find out a little bit more information, if they ever get that envelope open, I think most people will be surprised about the things that are happening in our judicial system and inside our federal policing agency, said Carbet. I think there needs to be an inquiry because I don't want other people to go through this like I did or Tony did or the other two guys. Lawfare. So they put these guys in jail while they let out violent criminals to make sure that their immigration things aren't impacted. And we're supposed to accept that. And that's egregious. That is absolutely intolerable. That is not acceptable. Okay. We should not accept that from our government. And with that, I will say goodbye to the stream. Thanks everybody for watching and have